everyone, Pandemonium here, bringing you a tutorial on 2D top-down movement as well as animations. This is seen in games such as the old Zeldas or the Game Boy Pokemon franchise. So it's used a lot. It's even used in modern games as well, especially RPGs. It's got that classic feel. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing you want to do is go ahead and import your character sprite spreadsheet. So I got one here that I'm going to import. What we want to do too is, just for being neat, is we need to create a folder. Or I'm going to create a folder. You can go ahead and right click, go to create, go to folder. And I'm going to call this folder artwork. And this is where all my artwork's going to go for this project here. I'm not going to have a lot, but it's good to be organized. So we're going to go into our artwork, go ahead and select our sprite sheet. So if we were to import this sprite sheet into the project, that looks like a mess, right? It has everything on there. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that because that's not what we want. What we need to do is we need to slice these images up. And how we do this is we're going to select our sprite sheet. On the right hand side in sprite mode, we're going to select that and go to multiple. And then we're going to hit, technically you hit apply first, and it'll apply this to save it in the multiple mode. Now if you forget, you just hit sprite editor, no big deal, it's going to remind you. It says, hey, do you want to apply this? And you just hit apply. Alright, and there it pulls up our sprite editor. So what we want to do is we want to slice this up. Cool thing about Unity is if you want to, if you go to the top left here on slice, and it has an automatic setting. And the automatic setting is pretty good and usually will get the job done. But if you notice here, we go automatic. The images I'm using almost look good. Over these images over here, like, hey, that's one big image. That's not what you want. But the problem is with some of these images is they're not the same size, right? You can tell there's a little bit difference. So we want them the same size. So what we're going to do is, instead of going to automatic, we're going to switch that to grid by cell size. And what we're going to set this is 16 on the X and 32 along the Y. We hit slice. That's perfect. Now we got some jankiness down here, but it's no big deal. So we're not going to be using these images for this tutorial. Now if I wanted to, I could go here and I could adjust this and set the appropriate size. If I were using this, it's no big deal. So I would just change this to 32 by 32, but we're not using that. Yeah. But we're going to focus on these up here. And they are sliced perfectly. So we're going to hit apply. Alright. Now in order to put our character into the scene, we're going to hit this button right here after we sliced it. And it shows all our images that we sliced. So we're going to import our first character here. And there he is. And we're going to rename him to player, because he is the player. Now if you notice, he's super small. So in order to change this, we're going to select that sprite image, because we want to change all these images to be a bigger size. The pixels per unit, we want to adjust this. Ideal size is 16. And after we apply this, there we go. We can finally see our character. Now, if you notice, he looks pretty blurry. In order to fix this, what we want to do is we want to change the filter mode to point no filter. And the compression, we want to switch this from normal quality to none. And hit apply. Yeah, and that looks a lot better. Kind of make him out and see what he is. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to get this guy to start moving. In order to do this, what we're going to start with is a rigid body 2D component. So we need to add to him. A rigid body will allow him to interact with physics in the game world. So we're going to go ahead and add component. And go to rigid body 2D, and it kind of let me go ahead and remove this real fast just so I can show you. It kind of popped up automatically for me, but if you just simply, if you start off where you haven't typed anything in recently, you start typing in rigid body, it'll start popping up for you. You just click it, and make sure you select 2D, not rigid body, but rigid body 2D, because he is a 2D sprite object. So now, if we attach that component, hit play. Oh no, he falls. That's because he is dealing with the gravity. So automatically, the gravity scale is set to 1 on the rigid body. You want to switch this to 0. and this will fix him falling. And then we hit play, and he no longer falls. Now, another thing is too, what I recommend, this doesn't really gonna affect this tutorial too much. If I were to leave this unchecked, nothing's gonna change, but I recommend checking this and getting the habit of checking this. And for whatever reason, if you need to uncheck it for something that you're doing, then go back and uncheck it. Not unless you start off knowing you need it unchecked. And this is freeze rotation, and this will save you a lot of headache once you start building your character's world and interacting with stuff. Because if this is left unchecked, he will have some weird interactions with things where his character will start rotating, not just moving along the X and Y, but it'll start rotating. It's dealing with more with like 3D objects, so we're gonna go ahead and check that to restrain the Z axis for him. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and move that right there, so minimize it. Alright, so now what we want to do is we need to create a script and do some coding to get this guy to move. It's real simple coding, so don't be too intimidated by it. It's nothing too crazy, but what we want to do is we want to go ahead and down here we want to right click, go to create, and select C# script. This will automatically create a script where you can name it. Alternatively, another way to get to it is you can go to add component, right? And you type in, just start typing in script, and it will pop up new script. You select that and you name the script, and we're gonna name this player movement. So that's what we're creating it for. And we'll go ahead and create it. It kind of loads up for us. Maybe. I'm sure if I re-click it, so it popped up automatic. I don't know why it does that to me. Two ways to get this script popping up. You either double click player movement, or you can double click player movement in the component section. Either one's gonna work. So let's say we double click that and it pops up for us. Alright, so what we want to do is we're gonna start off by deleting this and giving us some space. Alright, so let's create some variables here. We need movement speed for our players, and that's going to be a float variable. We're just going to call it move speed, and we're going to give it a base value of 5. Now, we need a variable for our rigid body 2D component. Make sure you're putting rigid body 2D, and you can call it whatever you want. You call it rigid body 2D, RB, and I'm going to call it RB, just make it short. But you're able to call it whatever you want. And then we need a private vector 2, because we are dealing with a 2D game. So all we need to reference is the X and Y, and we're going to call that movement. Awesome. Now, you can do this in one or two ways. You can do this in the start update, but I prefer to do this in the awake update. And what we're doing is we're getting references to our rigid body 2D. So we're getting the component rigid body 2D. So basically we're telling the engine, every time that we say in the script, every time we say RB, this is what we're referencing up here. We're saying, you know, RB is going to be our rigid body 2D, and we got to get the component off of what this script is attached to. Alright, now let's start coding the actual movement itself. And we're going to do this in the update function. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to create movement, and we're going to set our vector 2 at 0. Then we're going to start coding our input functions. So we're going to do input dot, so movement dot x equals input. We're going to do get axis raw. That's going to be good movement for this game. And we're going to call this horizontal. And make sure you spell horizontal correctly. Next, we're going to do movement.y equals input.get axis raw. Make sure you put in quotations. Vertical. Boom. Alright, so we got our input functions done. Now, what if our movement doesn't equal 0, right? So if movement not equal vector 2 dot 0. Okay, I'm just making sure I'm putting that right from a bracket. Sometimes I'll mess up my brackets and it'll cause errors in the scripts. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and create a function here. All right, this is gonna be move character. All right, so let's create the function move character. It's gonna be void move character. Awesome. Now let's set this. What does move character do? And what it's gonna do is move our rigid body. Now you can do this transform.position, but if you do it in the transform.position, I believe you're gonna have to deal with a vector 3. So you have to change your private variable up here to vector 3 and change it throughout the rest of the script. There's nothing wrong with it. We're just using the we're just moving the rigid body on this one. All right, so we are going to add our movement variable, and we are going to dot normalize it. Now, if you don't dot normalize it, it won't pop up an error for you. But what this does is, your character, when he moves along the X and the Y, he'll have the 5 speed. Now, if you were to press like WD and move along up and right at the same time, it's going to take both variables in. So your player would actually move faster diagonally than just in a normal direction. So if you put dot normalize though, it takes that into consideration. So you'll be moving at a normal speed when you move your character diagonally. If you don't dot normalize it, it'll look very weird for the player. It'll move very weird for the player. All right, so we want to multiply this by our move speed, as well as multiply this by time dot fix delta time. Now you can do this by time dot delta time. It won't pop up an error for you, but I recommend doing fix dot delta time. And the reason why we're doing this is because we're dealing with physics, and it's better to do this in a fix update. There we go. So if we save that, we go back into Unity, let it compile for a minute. We hit play, we should be able to move. Awesome. And then if we go, yep. He's moving at the correct speed when he's moving diagonally. So if you want to play around with it too, you can take that dot normalized out, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about as far as him moving a lot faster. But obviously we don't want that. Great. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to get this guy facing in the right direction when we're moving, because obviously he's just looking at us the entire time. Alright, so let's do that. So in order to do this, we are going to need what's called the animation window. So I already have mine up here, right? Now you can get this window by going to Window, Animation, and Animation if you don't have it already in your project. And it'll pop up, and it might pop up undocked, so it'll pop up something like what the heck? Why is this fighting me? Well, I was wanting to show you. Here we go. It might. Wow. I'm so sorry, guys. There we go. It might pop up something like this. All right. So, you can dock this. You saw me messing around with it, playing with it, so I think you get the gist. You just hold that down, and let that funky. Why is this not cooperating with me? There we go. Anyway, you get it. You hold that down and you move it around. You can move it around within your scene until eventually it cooperates and you get it right. That's what. Alright. So, another thing about the animation window. So if it looks like this and you don't have a create button, it's because nothing's selected. It doesn't know what you want to create it for. Like, what we create animations for. So go ahead and select our player, and boom, that create button's up there. So you ever get stuck, it's not popping up anything, make sure you select the object you're creating animations for in your hierarchy. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and create, and we want to be organized here, okay? So we're gonna create a new folder. We're gonna call this animations. Go into the animations folder. We're gonna create a new folder and call this player. This is our player animations. This is good to have folders for things that you're creating animations for. So, and the reason why we want to do this is because let's say we have a player, let's say we have an NPC, let's say we have an enemy, let's say we have a boss, and they all have different animations. That's going to be a mess. So we want a player folder, and we go into player folder, and we're just going to call this animation idle down. Because this is going to be the animation that's playing anytime that he is not moving, but he's facing the down direction. So we just got done walking down, and so he needs to be looking down. Just like if we just got done walking right, he needs to be looking to the right. We're gonna save this. A thing that happens is, alright, so we go in here, we're actually, okay, real quickly, a little cleanup. We're gonna go to, sorry for the interruption, we're gonna create another folder, and we're gonna call this scripts. Scripts, our script is gonna go in there. Sorry I didn't do that earlier. So another thing is when it comes to animations, right? So we go to animations, our player, here's our animations. It created not only our animation for idle down, but it also created this player controller. And it does this automatically. So anytime you first start off creating an animation for something, so that's our first animation for a player, it will automatically attach a component called the animator. And it's going to help you organize and kind of do the animations within your code, like gives you a reference, and it controls all the animations for this guy. So we don't have to worry about that too much right now. I just want to point that out just so you know it's there, because we will be referencing it later. But for right now, we're going to focus on the animations that we're creating for the player. So we have our idle down animation that we created. And we need to set the artwork for the animation. So we go to our artwork. We already have it open with all the individual sprites. So we need to find the idle down. Ironically, it's the same image that we put in for our player. And that's it. There we go. He's idle down. We got it. So in order to create the rest of them, on the top left here, we want to click on that box and we'll go to create clip. This will show you all the clips, all the animations that you have going on for this character. So we go create clip. Call this idle up. This is when he gets done walking up. And we are going to find the idle up. If you have trouble navigating this, you click on an object on the right hand side here, it'll show you a preview of it. So I know this thing idle up, his arms are moving, so obviously he's walking. So the frame before it, boom, there he is. So we're going to import this guy in here. And we can tell that this is the correct one because we hit play. It gives us a little bit of a preview of what it looks like. We can pause it. And that's done. So let's create another clip. We're going to do this for left and the right. I'm going to say idle right. I'm right-handed, so a lot of times I make the right animations before I make the rest. And we did an oops here. It started saving the animations in the artwork folders. I was just messing with artwork. Easy fix though. We just drag and drop that into that player folder up there. It's not gonna mess up anything, and they're all there. Awesome. Alright, so we are on our idle right, and we need to go back to artwork. Let's pay attention next time we save something where we're saving at. Alright, so we're idling right. We need the right image. That looks like this one. We've seen the preview is good. And then we can also hit play. Just make sure he's facing the right way. Wow, we're good. Alright, so let's create a new clip. And we are saving this under the assets, animations, player. Now we're in the right spot. We're going to save this idle left because that's all we got left. And this is down here. Click play, and he is facing the right way. We're good. So we have all our idles done. Now what we need to do is we need to create a blend tree in order to help us, the game engine, know like which way he's facing. So what we're going to do is we need to go to the animator window. If you don't have this, very similar to finding the animation window. You hit window, animation, animator. There it is. You just dock that where you please. So make sure your player is selected Then it'll pop up all the animations that's with them. You can control this with your mouse. Middle mouse moves around. You zoom in and out. Yep. Now, what we're gonna do is, this is gonna sound very counterintuitive, but trust me. We are gonna delete all these animations that we just created. Alright, and we're gonna start with a clean slate. Now these animations still exist. So we go to your player, they're still here, you can drag them back in if you need be. But for right now, we don't need them. Alright, so what we're gonna do is, we are going to right click this window, go to create state, and we're gonna create a new blend tree. We're gonna call this blend tree idle. This is dealing with our idle animations. Before we go into the blend tree, we need to set parameters here. And we are going to do this by floats. So we are setting a parameter, a float. We're going to call it move x. We'll create one more. I'm sure you can guess what this is going to be called, but move y, because we need x and y axis. And then now we're going to double click into our blend tree to come in here and select the blend tree, highlight it, and we're just going to call this the idle blend tree. Alright. Now, what we also want to do is, we want to select this blend type to 1D to 2D simple directional. The parameters we want to set is what we just created, the X and the Y. And then we want to click this plus icon here, and it's going to allow us to create motion fields. And we need 4 of them because we have 4 different idle directions. Now, if you're being silly and you add a 5th one by accident, all you gotta do is select it and you click the minus icon, and boom, it's gone. Alright. Don't worry about this box that pops up. We'll go over this in just a minute. So, what I'm gonna do is, this is a neat little trick, right? So, when you're clicking around, so let's say I click this, boom, it's gone. Oh no, what happened? I select my blend tree. Is that getting on your nerves? On the top right, you can click the lock, and it'll lock it here. And that's what I'm going to do for now. But don't forget to unlock it when you're trying to look at other stuff in your inspector. So we need to put these animations in these fields. So let's just ask them what clip we're playing here. So we're going to start off with the down, the default one. We are going to go up, idle right, idle left. Now, when you're setting these X and Y axis, just remember what direction X and Y is going based on where your character is moving. So down would be, if you're moving down, you're going into a negative position along the Y axis. So let's set this to -1, right? Going up would be a positive direction on the Y axis. Going to the right would be a positive direction along the X axis. Going to the left would be a negative direction off the x-axis, and we're just putting on values of 1. Now your other direction. So when it comes to up and down, you're only dealing with the y, so you want these as 0. And then when it comes to left to right, you're only dealing with the x-axis. So make sure that this is 0. Awesome. Now, just to be sure that we set these all right and we weren't being silly and messed up these numbers, on the bottom here you see a preview of what it'll look like, and this red dot represents where your player is putting their input in. So if they go to the right, wow, he moves, he's looking to the right. Up, left, down. So we did it. We're good. And then that's it for the idle blend tree. Alright, so now we have to access this blend tree in our code, or the animations per se. We access the animations in our code, and let the game know, what animation we're using when we're moving. So, what we want to do is we want to go back to our player script. So, again, don't forget to unlock. I just got done talking about that. Go ahead and unlock it. Select your player. And we are going to go back to our movement script. Here it is. Why do I have this up? Alright, so player movement script. Now we just need to add our, we need to start off by adding a new variable. And we need to get the animator. That's that controller that I talked about that got added to your player when we first started making clips. It's this right here. We need to grab this. So let's go back to our script. And by default, it's called animator, and we can call it that. Some people call it just anim for short. We'll just call it animator just so there's no confusion. Now here we'll say animator equals to get component, and we're referencing grabbing our animator controller, right? You just call it animator, though you don't put animator controller, but just animator. And then we're coding this down here. So when it's not equal to 0, right? When we're moving, we're gonna reference our animator, which we can do now since we got the component. We are going to set float, because that's what it is a float. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Our float is that move x. Because when we created that parameter, it was a float parameter. Move x, and that is involving the movement along the x-axis. And we need to do the same thing for our y. Simple enough. And if it's okay if you're a little lost here or a little confused, if you're new, this will definitely come to you in time. The more you mess with it and the more you practice, this will come to you. Even if you don't understand little bits and pieces, you can Google some of these bits and pieces if you're a little confused. So I know I'm going a little fast here and trying to cram this all in the video. But what I'm saying is, don't be discouraged. This will come to you in time. Just make sure you're following along and you're actively doing what we're doing. So yep, that's it. That's the everything. So just make sure you save it, and we'll go back into Unity and we'll let this compile. If it even compiles, like, I guess it ain't doing nothing. Now we want to hit play, and we want to test out the script. So when you hit play, you can even kind of see in our blend tree here. We go to the left, right, then we go to the right, go move down, up, and our character stays facing that direction that we move. Perfect. Alright, now let's add a little bit more excitement to him. Let's get him moving. And this is very similar to what we did. It's not too far off, so you're able to follow along this, able to follow along. Like, I'm confident you'll have the rest of it. So we're gonna go back to our player. Now we're gonna need some new animations. So what we want to do is we want to go to this top left, and we're going to create a clip. This time we are going to call it walk, because that's what he's going to be doing, and we're going to call it down. Do the walking down animation first. Let's go back to our artwork. It's going to be these first 4 ones right here. So let's go ahead and select these first 4. Now in order to select all these, if you select the first one you want to grab, hold down shift and select the last one. I'll grab all of them right here. Just like if I want to grab all the way down here, to grab it all the way down here. And it goes off the last one that you selected. So we grab that, and then we hold shift, and we click that, and we have all 4 of them. So we're going to drag these in our timeline, because these are the 4 that goes along the player. And there's our timeline. Now if we hit play, guy's a roadrunner. Like, he's going super fast. So we got to fix this. Pause that. Now, before we continue, make sure that this is checked for you, right? So we go along this timeline, and we go to these settings here. Not the settings for the window, but down here in the timeline, with these 3 dots, make sure show sample rate is checked. All right. I think by default it starts with unchecked, but make sure it's checked. And then samples, make sure we switch to 60. We're gonna switch that to 12. I think that's a good number. We hit play. He's looking much better. I still think it's a little bit fast, so we're going to adjust it real quick. How we're going to adjust it is we're going to move these frames along this timeline. We'll put them 2 apart. There we go. Yep, so we slowed it down. Another thing, if you notice at the very end, when it gets to the very end, it kind of snaps back to the original position. The reason why this is, if you look at the very top here, there's 2 frames here, 2 frames this one, and 2 frames here. There's only 1 frame here. That's why it snaps, and it looks a little off. So in order to fix this, right, and it does this by default because this is the last deal here, right? So it just shows it for its frame, and it goes back. We can add the last image. So this is right here. right? We could drag this up here, or we could copy this and then just paste this right here along this timeline. Either way you want to do it. If you notice, they're the same image, right? So even though we have two images here, it's no big deal. The same thing, and then it goes by 2 frames. So now when we hit play, it no longer has that snapness to it at the end. It's smooth. That's our walk down animation. I encourage you guys, if you guys are following along, to try to work a little bit ahead. So we did the walk down animation. At any point you can pause the video if you're feeling confident, do the rest of them by yourself, and then rewatch the video to see them. I'm gonna do all of them, so don't feel like I'm leaving you out to dry here. We're gonna do all of them. But if you want to work a little bit ahead and try to get one done, you pause the video and go back and rewatch it if you guys want to challenge yourselves a bit. So let's go ahead and create a new clip. We're going to call this a walk up. And we are walking up animation. So it starts here and there's 4 frames. So we hold shift and we got these 4 guys. And we bring them up. Alright, so we got our show. That's alright, it's going to stay good. And then we're going to move this to 12. Alright, and we're going to move these 2 apart. I'm going to copy this. Go a little bit quicker with this one. We hit play just to preview it, make sure everything's working right, and it is. That's awesome. Alright, so let's go ahead and create the other one. The right one next. Our right images. Grab these 4. Alright, bring them 2 apart. Not all of them together. I'll bring that over. Did I lose it? Oh, I lost it. Here, we're just gonna delete those. Alright, let's go back and click. Sorry about that. There we go. Alright, for whatever reason it was dragging all of them. Let's change this to 12 so I can see what I'm doing. Head over. Copy. Paste that. I'll play it. And it works. Alright, let's do the left one. Walk left. Down shift. Grab these 4 guys in there. Make sure you don't drag all of them like I did earlier. I keep forgetting to set the sample rate first, just to make it easier to move these guys around. Alright, we hit play to preview it, and he is walking left. So that's all our animations. Good job, guys. Alright, so now we need to create a blend tree for these animations, just like we did with the idle states. This one's going to be a little bit different. Now, so to get back to, so you might be still here, top left hand side, think of these like folders, right? Like a library, or files along your computer, right? You have idle, and then you have the base layer. You click on base layer, you get back to this main screen here where you see the idle animation. We're going to go ahead and delete these ones that we just created, just like we with the idle states. And they're still there, alright? So they're still here. Don't need to be alarmed. And we're going to create a new blend tree. So create new blend tree, and we're going to call this bad boy walking. So that's what it's going to be doing, or going to be managing, as our walking animations. Before we go into this, we need a new parameter, and this one's going to be different. It's not going to be a float, it's going to be a bool. And a bool is a true and false statement. We're going to call this moving, right? Because we need to know if moving is true, or we need to know moving is false in order to run these animations. So should he be standing still, or is our player clicking stuff and he needs to be moving? Alright, so let's go ahead and click into our walking. We're going to call this walking blend tree. Very similarly, we're going to change the 2D simple directional. We're going to move along the X and the Y, right? Parameters. We're going to create 4 motion fields just like last time. Alright, and this time for the clips, we need the walking clip. So we're going to go down, up, right, left. Alright. Down is going to be a -1. Up is a +1, just like before. Right is a +1, and left is a -1. We're going to change that to 0, because that's moving left. We don't have to deal about Y. Awesome. Now, if you hold down this right, it'll show like what direction he's doing. The reason being is it's not playing the animation. It's just starting with the starting frame. But if you hit play here, it'll start playing the animation. So if that helps you out visually, you hit play, and it'll start playing it. And we did it correct. Good job. So we're gonna hit pause. Right, and then we'll go. So this is good. We got that. Now there's one more thing we need to do though, before we jump into coding and start coding. When he's gonna be playing these animations, we're gonna go back to our base layer. We need a transition from idle to walking, and just the same, we need to transition back to idle when he's not walking. This is where our true and false statement really helps us out here. So let's make a transition to walking. And how I'm doing this, I'm just right clicking, make transition. We're gonna go to walking, right click, make transition back to idle. Right? Make sure there's one arrow here. If you end up making a mistake and you click this twice, you'll have 3 arrows. You can keep clicking it and it'll keep coming up. So just make sure that you are not doing multiple. If you do multiple, you just click on one of these. They're here in the transitions. Just like when we did the motion fields, there's the minus. You just click that, it's gone. Let's go ahead and select this one, the idle to walking, and we want to add a condition. So our Boolean statement, moving, is true, right? So if it's true, we are walking. Alright, one more thing before we do this other statement, or the other transition, is up here at the top where it has exit time, we want to select uncheck has exit time and change the duration to 0. The reason why we do this is when we're walking, without this, it has it's going to play the animation fully. So let's say if our walking, just to make numbers easy, is only half a second, right? It only takes him half a second to walk, the full animation. But you only held down and he's only walking for maybe a quarter of a second. Well, regardless if you held it down, he's going to stand still and finish out the rest of the walking animation. This fixes that issue. That way he's not standing still and still finishing, like he's still walking, and the player doesn't understand why he's doing that, and it looks weird for the player playing your game. So we're going to go ahead and uncheck that and set that to 0. Now we're going to go to the other transition. We're going to add moving. Set this to false, because if he is no longer walking, he's no longer moving, he's going to go back to idle. He's going to be standing still. We're going to go ahead and uncheck that, set that back to 0. We're good to go. Alright. So we have that done. I'm just saving this. I force of habit, but you can say it's not a bad idea to save your scene every once in a while, or your project. So we're going to go ahead and save that. The other thing we want to do is we want to go into our script. So we can go to click this for our player, or we can go back to our scripts folder and double click that, whichever you prefer. Now, last bit of code that we're going to do is we're going to go back to the move character right here underneath it. We're not changing the move character, we're just going underneath this. We're messing with the if statement, so we're technically doing. So, very similar to what we did before. We're going to get our animator component. And this time instead of set float, we're going to set bool. Because our moving parameter is a bool statement. So we're going to reference this. And this has to be spelt correctly, as well as capitalization has to match. So just keep that in mind. So like if I had this X lowercase or this Y lowercase, it wouldn't work. And we are going to set this to true. Now, if we're not moving, we need an else statement. So else I want to tidy this up a little bit. There we go. I like how that looks. Else, if we're not moving, you set this Boolean statement false. Alright, and something else too you can do to clean up your code, which I like doing, is you can actually delete the privates. Now, if those are gone, they're automatically private. Now, if you need them public, right? So regardless if it says private or doesn't say private, they're private. If you need them public, then you need to put public in front of it. Alright, and that should be it. So we're going to save that. Go back into our Unity. Hope for no errors. Let it play. We have our character fully animated. There we go. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I'm hoping to pump out some more in the future. But please give this video a thumbs up and go ahead and subscribe if you want more tutorials. But appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully this helps you out.